Okay, hey everyone, welcome back to another 31-minute podcast. Here I am with, well, he doesn't need much introduction, this guy, Ace Buchan.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I'm good.
Anyone ever call you Adrian? Apart from your mum.
I was going to say my mum, but she doesn't even call me Adrian. I think she calls me Abe. Yeah, I don't know. I got Ace when I was very young, probably 14, and
How did it come about?
the Evoca board riders guys, I think you'd have to chase them down for the full story. But yeah, I mean, I think it's been a nickname that served me well.
It's like your name. It's it's like Tiger Woods. Same thing. Mate, I really appreciate your time today. It's
Pleasure.
Yeah, I know you're a super busy schedule. Actually, when I was talking to Sully, and we thought, oh, is he in town? Yeah, he's in town. And he's like, yeah, let's see if we can get him in here. So I appreciate it. So you're a pro surfer, environmentalist in a way too. You're pretty keen on the environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And are you an author as well for children's books?
I did write a book when I actually wrote the story when I was probably still in primary school. And it was one of those ones that kind of just evolved, I kept going back to it, probably using it again and again for school assignments and stuff like that, creative writing. But I felt like it was a good story, and my dad was an English teacher. He actually taught me in Year 12, funnily enough, and my wife.
What, your dad taught you at school?
Yeah, he did. No way. He did. So
how did that go?
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, I think people maybe have a preconception about, what it would be like to be taught by your parent. But we've got a great relationship, and I really enjoyed kind of being there and being able to see him operate in a space that he's really passionate about. He loves, literature. He's very well read. And, I think that's kind of something that's pretty well lost on my generation, and especially the couple of generations younger than me. Sure. Everything's in the palm of your hand, and there's something beautiful about, switching off and reading a book.
Yeah. Are you going to write more?
Maybe. It's something I haven't had that much time to do, writing, throughout my career. I've written a few different pieces for some of the surf magazines and websites, which I've enjoyed, but having a career myself and having a bunch of kids definitely soaks up a lot of your time. So
you got 2 girls, don't you?
I got 2 girls and I got a young boy now as well.
Oh,
so
dear.
I got 3 under 5. So we've got our hands well and truly full.
Fantastic, good work. Pro surfing. That's really what I've got to wear glasses these days. So I want to ask you a few things about the journey, pressure, all sorts of stuff. So your first CT comp, what was it like? What was the first one? So you train your whole life.
Yeah.
You get to this point. Was it snapper?
It wasn't actually. So my story, I think, to go back a little bit before that, I was lucky enough to grow up at a time when Australian junior surfing was very strong. I came probably at the back end of an era that was probably our strongest ever. That had guys like Taj, Mick, Joel. And then there was a whole another kind of group of guys, Trent Munro, Philip McDonald, Lee Winkler, Nathan Hedge, all made the tour, had, amazing careers. And then, there was myself, Bede Durbridge, Sean Cansdell. And so, I had a very well-groomed, path to follow. I rode for Billabong at the time, who also were a big supporter of that junior series. And so I was still actually a junior. I went to South Africa and they put me in the trials at J-Bay.
Really?
And I made it out of the trials into the main event, and it wasn't firing J-Bay. It was pretty good. I didn't win my first heat, so it put me into the second round. And because I was one of the low seeds, I drew Kelly.
Oh.
That was actually, he'd been my idol since I could even remember. I think Black and White came out when I was about probably 11 years old, right when I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a pro surfer. Kelly won his first world title, released Kelly Slater in Black and White. So I was just like, he's the guy that I, want to try and become. And so anyway, probably that would have been 7 or 8 years later, I surfed my first CT against him. He absolutely smoked me.
What was that like, standing on the beach?
Amazing.
Going into your heat? What do you say to yourself? Like, how do you calm your nerves? Like,
I think it's just that's falling back on all the little things you've done, to get there. You either kind of panic or you can rely on your instincts. At that point, a lot of the preparation's done, before the hour or two that you surf. It's just about kind of, I think, being calm at that point.
yeah.
There was definitely a little bit of nervous energy, and it was an inconsistent swell too, so it wasn't like you could ride a lot of waves to work through that, but just an incredible experience. I did actually post a couple scores, and like I said, Kelly went on to win the event, and that particular event he did some incredible surfing. That was right when he started to get back on his roll. He'd been in retirement and come back to kind of challenge Andy. And so Andy, that was 2003. It was the year of his second world title. So him and Kelly kind of had a really intense rivalry at that time. So just to kind of be able to be a little small part of that was awesome. Then I was on the QS basically at the time, and it took me another 2 years to kind of figure that out and qualify. Till I made the tour full time.
So people who are listening to this have no idea about QS, CT, whatever. Talk us through the progression. Like, to become a pro surfer, what do you have to do?
It's pretty simple, really. It's like a lot of other sports. You compete as a junior, and then if you really want to make the top level, you go and compete on what we call is a qualifying series. You compete all year. It's super cutthroat, often in places that don't have the best waves.
Call it the grind.
They do call it the grind, against hundreds of hungry surfers from places like Brazil, Hawaii, America, South Africa, Europe. That's what you do. And then at the end of the year, you need to be in the top 10 on that QS, and you replace the bottom 10 from the World Championship Tour.
So the bottom 10 cut every year?
Yeah, so the bottom 10 fall off from the top level, and the top 10 from that second tier come up to replace them. So
wow. So it's pretty impressive, because you've been in the top 10 most of your career. I've followed most of your career. So and I'm sure you've gone in different parts, but you're always on the tour.
Yeah.
And you're a veteran now.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I was watching you surf just the other day. I don't know, on a board riders battle on the weekend. So that's more of a fun thing for you. And I've watched most of your CT comps, and you're always how long have you been on tour now?
So 2020 is going to be my 15th consecutive year, and I think, like you're saying, just to actually be there every year and not kind of have to fall back to the QS and then make.
So some guys go back to the QS.
Yeah, there's plenty of guys that fall off, have a year or two off, and come back and there for a couple of years and fall off. For me, I feel like that's one of my probably greatest achievements, to have been able to be at that kind of cutting edge of professional surfing for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not easy, it's bloody hard to be there every year, and it does take a lot.
For sure. What's your favourite break, by the way? Where'd you win the last event you won was in Tahiti, wasn't it?
Yeah. Look, everywhere we go, I think on its day, they're world-class waves, whether you look at, Snapper, Bells, Margaret's, Fiji. It's not on the tour anymore, but that's probably, one of my favourites. Tahiti, for obvious reasons. Jeffreys Bay, I've got family history in South Africa, so that one feels pretty close to home for me. Europe, incredible beach breaks. Pipe.
So all of them?
All of them are favourites, but to be honest, if I had to pick somewhere, I'd probably pick home.
Really?
Surfing at home, where I can surf with my friends and run down from my house and surf, that feels really special to me. And I think it kind of reminds me that, I do get to do this as a job, but I actually just love surfing. It's the one sport where the year finishes at Pipe, and I'll be there, whether I'm surfing myself or cheering my friends on. And if the waves are good, I'll go back to my house and I'll surf again. And I don't think you can say that about too many sports. There's not too many tennis players, golfers, cricketers that would finish their season and then go, well, let's go down to the net, or let's go and whack a few more balls. But I think that's the beauty of surfing. We just love it. We love being in the ocean.
I was talking to Trev before you come, and Trev goes, can you please ask him How do you keep? I could see it in your eyes. You're still motivated. You're still, how old are you now?
I'm 37.
37. So you've been surfing for pretty much, I don't know, 30 years. How do you maintain that fire?
Well, I think it's probably what I was just saying. It's that love of being in the ocean.
Do you ever get sick of it?
There are times when, you need to take a bit of time out, like to kind of, I guess, stoke the fire a little bit. You can't burn yourself out, but I mean, it only takes a nice 6-foot groundswell and some offshore winds to kind of fan the flames a bit. But yeah, I think the motivation for me comes from actually having a love of competing. I do genuinely kind of relish the opportunity to put a jersey on and compete against the world's best. There are some people I think that shine more in a kind of, free surfer capacity. For me, I know that I've personally done my best surfing with a jersey on, which, I'm lucky.
Because a lot of people fold, don't they?
Yeah, I think for me, having my back up against a wall or having pressure has actually brought the best out in me. So I've enjoyed that throughout my career.
Is that a learned thing? Because that's one of the questions I had for you today. So let's say you're in a quarterfinal or a final or a semi, and there's like 1 minute to go or 2 minutes to go. And I've often seen you sit there and you might be a point or two behind. What goes through your mind? Because some people rush, some people get anxious. You seem to be always calm.
Yeah.
Is that a learned thing, or is it?
I mean, I think it is, but
What's going through your head?
I think, like you said, people respond to pressure differently.
Yeah.
I think being in that position in the first place is a privilege to kind of have that pressure. For me, I think my record's actually better against, guys in the top 5 and the top 10 than it is probably against, guys in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, in those pressure situations against the top guys, things become a lot clearer. You can kind of, I can think of times in my career, whether it's maybe an injury or it's being in a tough situation, all of a sudden, all the, the bullshit in your life falls away. Mm-hmm. It's the same as, when you have a child or when someone's sick, it's like all of a sudden all the insignificant stuff in your life becomes very much insignificant. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same, whether you look at, Federer, Steve Smith now with his batting, it's like there's a real kind of simple kind of process-driven mindset. And I think for me, when I found that place of, the zone or flow, it's like there's not actually a lot of kind of conscious thinking going on. It's subconscious. You've done the work and you're actually just kind of relying on all those little things and your instinct and your talent. And you're not overthinking the situation.
So do you bring it back to that you've done everything you can, and then it's like, is that how you stay calm? Instead of, once you overthink it, you obviously get anxious and...
Yeah, I mean, look, there's obviously moments, I can think of heats where I've had a terrible start and I've had to actually kind of sit there, take a few deep breaths and go, all right, well, if you're going to dig yourself out of this hole, you need to own the back half of this heat. You need to, for me, one of the simple things I've kind of learnt is asking myself, what's important now? And that's, boiled down, when you look at the acronym, it's WIN, it's WIN. And it's like going, okay.
That's cool.
What is it now that I actually need to do to get myself out of this situation and put myself where I want to be? If that's, being patient, if that's putting pressure on your opponent, if that's quickly getting yourself back into the heat by getting a score under priority or forcing them to make a mistake, you've got to obviously make those decisions, but that then has to kind of become, in some senses, a subconscious decision. Mm-hmm. I think for me, when I've got too many thoughts going through my head and options and possibilities, I get flustered.
And you can't, and you're surfing on a board. You see the surfers when they get flustered, they just don't operate the same.
Yeah, for sure. It's life, isn't it? It's like when you don't have a plan and when you kind of torn in different directions, that's our reaction.
Yeah. Do you have a routine that you follow before a major comp? How many comps are there in the year?
We have at the moment 11 World Tour stops.
So the day of or the day before, what's your lead up? What's your preparation for it? Do you have anything special? Or?
Yeah, it changes a little bit, and I think that's the part of our sport that's unique, is that our environment changes all the time. So you don't want your preparation to be exactly the same every time. For some heats you're preparing on a boat in a channel, it might be pissing down rain and you've got no space to work with. You're sharing it with 2 or 3 of your friends who you might even be competing against. And then maybe on the Gold Coast at Snapper Rocks, you're in a huge athlete area. You've got bikes, you've got a warm-up area, you've got all these facilities to use. So I like to try and tailor my routine and my warm-up to whatever the environment is.
Yeah.
So if it's somewhere like Fiji or Tahiti, it's like I'd like to warm up before I get on the boat to go out there. And then...
How do you do that on the boat? Just do you...
Well, warm up on land before I get on the boat, so I feel switched on and ready to go.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you're surfing somewhere, with a good setup, you might want to physically warm up, 30 minutes before you surf. And obviously a big thing for us is having your eye on the ocean and the conditions changing. Places like Europe, we deal with 5 or 6 metre tides, so it's changing as much in 2 hours there as it changes in 6 hours here. So you really have to be closely watching the conditions.
It's like Super Tubes, just looks like a big mess.
Yeah, and it can be.
And I just don't even know how you guys find a way.
Yeah.
It's like when it's like 8 foot and just everywhere.
Yeah, it's a particularly tricky wave to read, and when it's good, and when it's bad, it's bad. But yeah, I mean, in terms of my routine, I think I like to give myself a bit of space. For me, finding space gives me that clarity. I've spent a lot of my career, I guess being self-coached. So
do you have a coach?
I do. So I've been working with Glenn, Micro Hall, for the last 2 years. And after having kind of been, I guess, self-coached for such a long time, I was really looking for some input.
Is that just to sharpen, like get someone?
Well, yeah, I think it's like, you develop a bunch of tools or weapons over your career, and then there are certain times when you need to sharpen those arrows, for the next time you go into battle. And so, yeah, working with Glenn's been really refreshing. And as much, as it's helped me kind of sharpen those tools, it's been, the friendship and the support as well. He's also got 3 young kids, 2 girls and a boy, just like me. We're going through a lot of the same things, travelling, being away from our families, or if we do take our families, balancing that whilst we're on the road. And he's just a great friend and a really good human, so I appreciate having him in my corner. And yeah, like I said, after having kind of, not that I've done it by myself, because I've had incredible support from my family and my sponsors. Hurley provided me for 15 years with, an incredible support team, from, putting us in great houses to kind of having someone there to help us on the day to providing us with good food and so on. So I had a lot of support there, but it feels nice to kind of have my own little team now.
Yeah, for sure. It's something really funny about you. I feel like I know you really well, but I sort of know you. But every single person that I've ever spoke to about you, every single one of them says you have the best attitude.
Yeah, well, that's nice.
When you think when you get to your level of doing anything, ego can come into play. And attitude is what I think companies look for, and all this sort of stuff. But it's huge credit to you, achieving all the things that you have. Sorry, I just had a couple of things that we've already covered. Like, what about young kids? So young kids, I have a surfer myself. He was surfing with you this morning at Avoca. As a parent, and I think a lot of parents would want to hear this. So as a parent, I don't have a lot to do with his progression now. When they're young, you get a bit carried away, I think, going, go here, go there, whatever. But pressure for young kids can work the opposite. Like I've watched all kids. But if a young kid wants to become a pro surfer, and they're listening to this and they're 8 years old and they have the Ace Buchan moment where they're like, I want to be a pro surfer or a tennis player or whatever. What do they need to do? Because it is a cloudy process for a parent to guide them. You know, like, do you get coaches early? Do you just be in their world but not try and live through them? Or like, you've been through the whole lot. I'd love to hear your point of view on how do you get your kid to...
Sure. Well, attitude. I mean, I think you said it before. I think that for me has probably been my greatest asset. Like, there were plenty of my peers that had just as much talent as me, if not more. But I know that, you know, deep within me, I had a very strong will and commitment to succeed and achieve the things I wanted to set out. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that with a poor attitude. You know, in this game and in all professional sports, you lose just as much as you win. Yeah. And you need to be able to learn from those losses and react positively to them.
Is it hard? Like,
it's really hard.
If you lose in any part, like whether it's a semi or a round 2 or whatever, when you get out, and I really want to hear what you got to talk about kids, but I'm interested in this part. Like, you get out and there's 2,000 people standing on the beach. Yeah. And you're down and you've got kids running up for autographs. Yeah. What do you do? Like, you must just want to like run in and throw your surfboard on the ground.
I've tried not to do that. You know, I've tried to be able to process, I guess, you know, my disappointment or frustration.
Is this something you tell yourself, or is it something like...
Yeah, I think before I leave the water, I like to at least, you know, take something with me in terms, whether I win, lose or draw. I like to have a moment to myself where I'm like, okay, well, that went really well and that's why it went well. Or, gee, I fucked that one up and this is why I did, and this is what I need to change. Because, yeah, like you said, you might come in and if it's Brazil, it's like there might be 25,000 people on the beach and, you know, you don't want to be the one running up the beach, smashing your board and so on. And like...
so sportsmanship is a massive thing.
It's huge. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think back to your, you know, question about, you know, what does it take for kids? I think it takes a lot of different things, but I think having a balanced attitude and a positive one is a huge part of it. We spend a lot of time on the road, you know, like you can be, you know, I can think of times where I was, you know, I'd flown maybe 40 hours to get to Brazil to surf in an event that maybe it wasn't the biggest event, but I was like, okay, I want to go and start the year there strongly and, you know, give myself the best chance to either re-qualify or make the tour. And losing straight away, you know, and you're just on the other side of the world, you've spent thousands of dollars and, yeah, you know, you need to be able to find some kind of silver lining in that. Yeah. But it's also important to feel frustrated and to feel disappointed. Like, you can't, I think, you know, you've got to own that. And I think the modern, I guess, approach to, you know, not sports science, but I guess mindfulness and, you know, sports psychology is to actually own that, you know, and those feelings, they're on the bus, but you're the one that's driving it, you know. Don't let that dictate where you're going.
So don't let that event...
Yeah, acknowledge whatever it is, the disappointment, the frustration, but realise that you're the one driving, you know, in whichever direction you want to go.
Your competitors, if you lose against a competitor, excuse me, do you, and some of them are your friends, a lot of them are your friends probably, like, are you happy for them? Or are you like a bit like, oh, like you have to just...
Yeah, look, I think that's something that you, in an individual sport, it takes a while to process. You're competing, you know, for yourself.
For your livelihood, for your everything, aren't you?
Exactly, but I think you realise that having meaningful friendships and people that you can genuinely get behind and support makes that experience a lot richer. Yeah.
Do you ever feel bad when you beat your mate?
Yeah, I think there's
surfing against Mick Fanning, I suppose you guys are great mates. And you get the wave at the end that just knocks him out.
I would say not immediately. Immediately, you're happy, you know, because I think that's competitive sport. You got to have that mongrel in you.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
you need to be a competitor.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's a difference between being competitive and being a competitor.
Right.
And yeah, I think, look, I feel as though I'm someone who's genuinely empathetic, whether it's, you know, towards friends, family, or competitors. And yeah, that's definitely one of the things you need to navigate in an individual sport. Is like, how do you build friendships with the friends that you're actually competing against and traveling with, but at the same time be focused enough, because ultimately you're in a sport that requires a bit of selfishness.
Yeah.
Which is something that for me now as a parent and a husband, like I've found tricky to navigate, you know, like choosing the right times to focus on myself and my career as opposed to, you know, focusing on my family.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all the parts, you know, that make up the territory of being a professional athlete.
For sure. It leads me to the last thing I want to ask you. I mean, I could be here for all day, but the last thing I want to ask you is, what's next for you? What's
2020? I think I'm really excited to still be on tour. You know, like there's an incredible kind of array of talent. You know, from Kelly, who's 10 years older than me, right down to the young guys on tour.
Because most surfers would retire around your age, wouldn't they?
Yeah, most guys like Mick, Joel, Taj, they all retired probably around 38.
Okay.
And it's definitely something, you know, I think as an athlete, you kind of get to over 30 and conventional kind of, you know, wisdom, I think, has you question like your place in that sport.
Yeah.
I think now with...
Is it because of your body, or is it because of...
Well, I mean, I think...
What makes an athlete retire at 38? Like, is it you're feeling your body's...
Well, I think it's probably been that's just been the kind of done thing, you know, for a long time, that probably even earlier, like, you know, if you look at kind of that generation of, you know, Tom Carroll, maybe Barton Lynch, Damien Hardman, those kind of guys, they all retired, you know, early 30s.
Did they?
I guess I've been lucky enough to be part of a generation where we've got support, we've got modern, you know, technology and science, and we know how to look after our bodies a lot better. So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think I'm definitely looking at the next chapter, but at the same time, I know that I'm doing my best surfing now, and I don't want to throw that away.
Yeah, you're ripping. Absolutely.
So, no, thanks. But I really still enjoy competing. I think for me, beyond the tour, I'm now looking to kind of use my platform to, I guess, inspire people, you know, whether that's kids who want to have a career, or, you know, you mentioned that the environment's something that I've been kind of active in for a long time, but I guess it hasn't been until the last couple of years that I've been able to start to do tangible things with that. I did a really cool trip to Tasmania just a few weeks ago. I'd never been down there. It's somewhere I'd always wanted to be. I've travelled around the...
You've never been there? Have you been everywhere else in the world?
Years, but never been to Tasmania. And yeah, to go down there, you know...
Isn't Shipstones down there?
Shipstones is down there. We were going to surf that. It didn't quite come together, but it wasn't actually a surfing trip. I wanted to go down and visit the Tarkine Wilderness area, which is somewhere that, you know, I believe should be protected as part of the World Heritage area that's just south of there, but it isn't, and it's under threat from logging. And so having the opportunity to work on some projects like that is what I want to do more of.
I'm going to just ask you another question.
For sure.
Advice for parents, mate. Advice for parents. Like, advice for parents helping kids.
I probably need a little bit too, because my kids are about to start all playing sport.
But yeah, you've been there. Like, should they be really invested? Should they be really in their world? Should they let them have some breathing? Did your dad not? Is it true your dad didn't let you get sponsored to 16?
I was first sponsored. No, I think I was, when I first started riding for Billabong, I was 14. And yeah, I had people approach me before then, and my dad said to me, he's like, no, this isn't the right thing. Like, obviously you see a lot of people maybe jump at the first sponsorship that comes their way. And
so it's more about helping you make the right decision.
Yeah, I think it was being supportive to help me make the right decision, which I guess probably answers your question about parents, you know. Yeah. It wasn't until, you know, Billabong came along and they were like the right fit for me at the time.
Yeah.
I think as parents, you know, from my experience, and everyone's different, every child's different and needs different things. And I'm even seeing that with my kids. You know, I got 3 kids who are completely different to each other, and they all need different things.
Mine's probably
my
too young.
eldest is only 5, so she loves to surf.
Yeah.
And my 2.5-year-old loves to, you know, go tandem on the board with me. But I think just to be supportive, and, you know, I hope that I can provide that for my kids to help them find their passion. If it's surfing, great. If it's ballet, awesome. Soccer, you know, science, whatever it is, like I want to help them find something that they're passionate about. And I think for me, the thing that I've learned, if you can combine your talent and your passion, it's going to go a long way to making you happy in life. And I know that that's what gets me up out of bed in the morning. So, yeah, I feel very lucky to have had that in my life, and I want to try and provide that for my kids.
If you could give yourself advice 20 years ago,
Yep.
what would it be?
Oh, gosh, I'd say a lot of things to myself 20 years ago. Probably just be organised, you know, trust your instincts and have fun.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Mate, the eternal grommet, Ace Buchan. Thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thank you.